alien boss mistreated the human janitor, but when roles reversed, everyone was shocked. Marcus Hale stood before the smudged mirror in the cramped staff bathroom, straightening his ill-fitting uniform. At 32, he hardly looked like the dashing space adventurer he'd once dreamed of becoming. His brown hair was flecked with premature gray at the temples, and there was a weariness in his blue eyes that spoke of a lifetime of disappointments. With a sigh, he splashed water on his face, steeling himself for another long shift as a janitor aboard Way Station Zeta. As he stepped out into the dingy service corridor, he nearly collided with Stella, his Arcturian coworker. She was a vision of loveliness, with lavender skin, silver hair that fell in a sleek bob, and vibrant amber eyes. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as she flashed him an apologetic smile. "Oops, sorry, Marcus. Lost in thought again," she said, her musical voice warming him from the inside out. Marcus chuckled. "No worries, Stella. I'm pretty sure being lost in thought is the only way to survive this job." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Too true. Well, back to the grind. Catch you later, handsome." With a wink, she sashayed off, leaving Marcus grinning like a fool. Shaking his head, he grabbed his mop and bucket and headed out into the main concourse. The station was a hive of activity, with all manner of alien species hurrying to and fro. Marcus deftly wove through the crowd, keeping his head down to avoid drawing attention. He'd learned early on that janitors were essentially invisible, part of the background hum of the station. It was a lonely existence, but it paid the bills. Barely. As he mopped, Marcus's thoughts drifted to how he'd ended up in this dead-end job. He'd once had such big dreams back on Earth, but his family couldn't afford the fancy flight academies, so he'd enlisted in the United Earth Space Corps, hoping to work his way up to a pilot's chair. But he'd quickly discovered that the UESC was just as stratified as civilian life. Grunts like him were destined to stay at the bottom, while the elite got all the glory. After one too many risky missions with little recognition, he'd mustered out, trading one thankless job for another. "Hail!" a grating voice snapped, jolting Marcus out of his reverie. He looked up to see his supervisor, Hertzax, bearing down on him. The Zoran was an imposing figure with mottled gray skin, a bald, elongated head, and cold obsidian eyes. He viewed humans as little better than beasts of burden and took every opportunity to remind Marcus of his place. "Yes, sir?" Marcus asked, keeping his tone carefully neutral. Hertzax thrust a clawed finger at a nearby waste receptacle. "The trash is overflowing, human. I thought I made it clear that maintaining this area was your responsibility." Marcus bit back a retort. The bin had been empty when he'd last checked it, but he knew arguing would be futile. "Sorry, sir, I'll take care of it right away." "See that you do," Hertzax sneered, "or you'll be looking for new employment." He stalked off, leaving Marcus seething. Gritting his teeth, Marcus emptied the bin, imagining it was Hertzax's smug face he was dumping into the incinerator. It was petty, but it helped leaven his frustration. He knew he was capable of so much more than this, but the universe seemed determined to keep him in his place. As he finished up, a commotion near the security checkpoint caught his attention. Raised voices, followed by a guttural roar that sent a chill down Marcus's spine. A hulking reptilian figure burst through the checkpoint, scattering guards like bowling pins. It was a Kargan berserker, a vicious mercenary species known for their hair-trigger tempers and brutal strength. The berserker fixed its slit-pupiled gaze on the terrified crowd and let out another ear-splitting roar. Then, to Marcus's horror, it charged straight towards Stella, who stood frozen in shock. Marcus didn't hesitate. Adrenaline surging, he sprinted forward, brandishing his mop like a quarterstaff. "Hey, Scaleface!" he shouted. "Pick on someone your own size!" The berserker whirled, its lips peeling back from dagger-like teeth. Marcus swallowed hard but held his ground. He knew this was suicide, but he couldn't let Stella come to harm. The berserker lunged, claws extended, and Marcus met its charge head-on. What followed was a desperate blur of dodging, parrying, and striking with every dirty trick Marcus had learned in the UESC. The berserker was immensely strong and fast, but Marcus managed to hold his own, even landing a few solid blows. The mop handle finally snapped under the creature's onslaught, and Marcus found himself grappling with it hand-to-hand. Just as he felt his strength failing, a blinding arc of energy struck the berserker, sending it crashing to the deck. Marcus looked up to see Stella standing over him, a compact stunner gripped in her trembling hands. I thought you could use an assist," she said shakily. Marcus slumped back, his entire body aching. "Impeccable timing," he wheezed. "Remind me to give you a raise." Stella laughed, though there was an edge of hysteria to it. Around them, security personnel swarmed in to restrain the unconscious berserker. Marcus struggled to his feet, waving off medical attention. The last thing he needed was to lose a day's pay recovering in the infirmary. As the excitement died down, Marcus found himself facing a furious Herzax. The Zoran's obsidian eyes glittered with malice as he jabbed a clawed finger at Marcus. "You've really done it this time, Hale," Herzax snarled. "Abandoning your post, interfering in security matters. I'll have your job for this." Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but before he could speak, another voice cut in. "I think you'll find, Herzax, that Mr. Hale's actions were entirely justified." Marcus turned to see a tall, imposing figure striding toward them. The newcomer was a Valkorian, a humanoid species known for their keen intellect and unwavering sense of justice. His deep blue skin was set off by piercing silver eyes, and his white hair was pulled back in a sleek queue. Herzax bristled, clearly recognizing the Valkorian. "Commander Zarn, with all due respect, this is a janitorial matter. I hardly think it warrants your attention." Commander Zarn fixed Herzax with a cool stare. "On the contrary, when a member of the station's staff displays exceptional bravery and quick thinking, it very much warrants my attention." He turned to Marcus, his expression softening. "Mr. Hale, your actions today were nothing short of heroic. You placed the safety of others above your own, and in doing so, prevented a tragedy. That kind of leadership is rare and invaluable." Marcus felt a flush of pride at the praise, even as Herzax sputtered in indignation. "Leadership? He's a janitor, for Zock's sake." Zarn's eyes flashed with anger. "And you, Herzax, are a disgrace to your position. Your negligence and disregard for the well-being of those under your supervision is unacceptable." He drew himself up to his full, impressive height. "Effective immediately, you are relieved of your duties as janitorial supervisor. Mr. Hale will be taking over your position, and you will report to him for your new assignment as a member of the janitorial staff." Herzax's jaw dropped, his gray skin flushing an ugly purple. "You can't be serious. I won't stand for this." Zarn's tone was icy. "You are welcome to file a formal complaint with the station's ethics board, but I warn you, I will be submitting a full report detailing your gross misconduct. I suggest you accept this demotion with what little grace you can muster." With a final venomous glare at Marcus, Herzax stormed off, his clawed hands clenched into fists. Marcus watched him go, scarcely able to believe what had just happened. Stella sidled up to him, her eyes wide with awe. "Did that really just happen? Did you seriously just get promoted to supervisor?" Marcus ran a hand through his hair, a giddy laugh bubbling up in his chest. "I guess I did. Wow, I never thought." Zarn clapped him on the shoulder, a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. "Report to my office at 0800 tomorrow, Mr. Hale. We have much to discuss about your new role. And congratulations. Something tells me you're going to do great things here." Marcus snapped a crisp salute, the gesture feeling more natural than it had in years. "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." As he walked away with Stella, Marcus couldn't keep the grin off his face. For the first time in a long time, the future looked bright. He had a chance to prove his worth, to show the galaxy what humanity was truly capable of. And with Stella by his side, he felt like he could take on anything. "Look out, universe," he thought. "Marcus Hale is just getting started." Marcus tugged at the collar of his new supervisor's uniform, still marveling at the unexpected turn his life had taken. Just yesterday, he'd been scrubbing toilets and dodging Herzax barbs. Now he was in charge of the entire janitorial department, with a chance to make a real difference on the station. He took a deep breath and stepped into the staff break room, where his team was assembled for their morning briefing. A hush fell over the room as he entered, the alien workers eyeing him with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Stella gave him an encouraging smile from the back of the room, and he felt his nerves settle. "Morning, everyone," he said, his voice steady. "As you've probably heard, there have been some changes in leadership around here. I know it's going to be an adjustment, but I want you to know that my door is always open. I'm here to listen, to support you, and to make sure we're all working together to keep the station running smoothly." A few tentative nods, a few raised eyebrows. Marcus forged ahead. "I also want to make one thing crystal clear. There will be zero tolerance for the kind of bullying and harassment that used to go on under Herzax's watch. We're a team, and we'll treat each other with respect. Period. As if on cue, Herzak slouched into the room, his janitorial uniform hanging off his lanky frame. He glowered at Marcus, but remained silent. Marcus met his gaze evenly. "Herzak, glad you could join us. Grab a seat, we're just getting started." Herzak's obsidian eyes flashed with resentment, but he complied, slumping into a chair at the back of the room. Marcus spent the next half hour outlining his vision for the department: more efficient scheduling, better communication, and a focus on worker well-being. He could see some of the tension easing from his team's postures, replaced by cautious optimism. As the meeting wrapped up, Stella approached him, her lavender skin flushed with excitement. "Marcus, that was amazing! I've never seen the team so engaged. You're a natural leader." Marcus ducked his head, feeling a blush creep up his neck. "Thanks, Stella. I just hope I can live up to everyone's expectations. This is all pretty new to me." She squeezed his arm, sending a pleasant tingle through his body. "You've got this, and you've got me. I'm with you every step of the way." He covered her hand with his, marveling at the contrast of his pale skin against her vibrant hue. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Stella." "You're my rock." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the rest of the world fell away. Marcus felt a magnetic pull, a longing to close the distance between them, and the moment was shattered by a harsh bark of laughter. They sprang apart to see Herzak watching them, his lips twisted in a sneer. "Isn't that precious?" he drawled, the human in his little purple pet. "You really think you can handle this job, Hale? You're nothing but a glorified trash collector." Marcus straightened, squaring his shoulders. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Herzak, but I'm not going to sink to your level. We have work to do, and I expect you to do your part, just like everyone else." Herzak's sneer deepened, but he said nothing, stalking out of the room with a dismissive wave of his hand. Stella let out a low whistle. "Wow, he's going to be a problem, isn't he?" Marcus sighed. "Probably, but we can't let him get to us. We've got a station to run." And run it they did. Over the next few weeks, Marcus threw himself into his new role, working tirelessly to improve morale and efficiency. He instituted a rotating schedule to ensure everyone got regular breaks, set up a suggestion box for anonymous feedback, and made a point of publicly praising good work. Slowly but surely, he could see the culture of the department shifting. Laughter echoed through the halls as his team joked and bantered during their shifts. Productivity soared as workers took pride in their tasks, no longer fearing Herzak's wrath. Even Herzak seemed to be coming around, grudgingly following orders and keeping his snide comments to a minimum. Marcus made a point of treating him fairly, offering praise when it was due and constructive criticism when necessary. But just as things were settling into a comfortable rhythm, a crisis struck. A massive freighter docked at the station, its hull breached and leaking toxic waste. The docking bay was thrown into chaos as the caustic sludge spread, threatening to contaminate the entire level. Marcus leapt into action, mobilizing his team to contain the spill. They worked frantically, donning protective gear and wielding high-powered cleaning equipment. Marcus was in the thick of it, coordinating efforts and pitching in wherever he was needed. As he struggled to seal a particularly nasty leak, he heard a cry of pain over the comm. His heart seized as he recognized Stella's voice. "Stella's down!" Herzak's voice crackled over the link. "She's trapped in the waste!" Marcus was moving before he even registered the decision, sprinting towards Stella's last known location. He found her slumped against a wall, the toxic sludge lapping at her legs. Herzak was nowhere to be seen. "Stella!" He dropped to his knees beside her, cradling her head in his hands. "Stay with me, baby. I'm going to get you out of here." Her eyelids fluttered, her breathing shallow. "Marcus, I'm sorry. I wasn't careful." "Shh, don't try to talk. Save your strength." He keyed his comm. "I need a med team in here now. We have a worker down." Gathering Stella in his arms, he staggered to his feet, wading through the muck towards safety. Each step was agony, the toxic waste eating through his protective suit. But he pushed on, driven by a fierce determination to save the woman he loved. As he burst through the containment barrier, medics swarmed around them, whisking Stella onto a gurney. Marcus collapsed to his knees, his strength finally giving out. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Herzak's face, watching from the shadows with an unreadable expression. When Marcus awoke in the infirmary, Stella was by his side, her hand clasped tightly in his. She looked pale and drawn, but alive. "Hey, hero," she whispered, managing a weak smile. "Heard you saved the day." Marcus squeezed her hand, blinking back tears of relief. "I couldn't let anything happen to you, Stella. I love you." Her smile widened, her amber eyes glowing with warmth. "I love you too, Marcus. Have for a long time." They lay there for a long moment, savoring the simple joy of being together. Finally, Marcus broke the silence. "What happened out there, Stella? How did you get trapped?" A shadow crossed her face. "It was Herzax. He pushed me, Marcus, straight into the waste. I think he was trying to sabotage you, make you look bad." Marcus felt a cold fury settle in his gut. "That son of a... I'll have his head for this." Stella gripped his hand tighter. "No, Marcus, don't stoop to his level. You're better than that." He took a deep breath, wrestling his anger back under control. "You're right. As always, I'll deal with Herzax through proper channels. We've got to be the example here." She smiled, her eyes drifting closed with exhaustion. "That's my Marcus. Always doing the right thing." As she slept, Marcus lay awake, his mind churning. He knew confronting Herzax wouldn't be easy. The Zoran was cunning and ruthless, and he clearly had it out for Marcus. But Marcus also knew he had something Herzax could never understand: the unwavering support of his team and the love of an incredible woman. With that kind of strength behind him, he could face anything, even a vengeful ex-boss with a chip on his shoulder. Marcus stood before the mirror in his quarters, adjusting his uniform for the umpteenth time. His reflection stared back at him, the picture of a confident, capable leader. But inside, his nerves were jangling like a box of loose wires. Today was the day of the surprise inspection by Commander Zarn's superiors, and everything had to be perfect. Marcus had spent the past week in a frenzy of preparation, overseeing a top-to-bottom cleaning of the station, reviewing protocols with his team, and double and triple checking every detail. But he couldn't shake the feeling that something was going to go wrong, and that something he knew was likely to be Herzax. The Zoran had been suspiciously quiet since the toxic waste incident, going about his duties with a sullen efficiency that set Marcus's teeth on edge. He knew Herzax was up to something, but he couldn't prove it. Not yet, anyway. A chime at the door startled him out of his thoughts. "Come in," he called, turning to face his visitor. Stella glided into the room, resplendent in her own crisp uniform. Her lavender skin glowed with health, a far cry from the pale, drawn figure she'd been in the infirmary. The sight of her still made Marcus's heart skip a beat. "Looking good, boss," she said with a playful smile, straightening his collar. "You ready for this?" Marcus blew out a breath. "As ready as I'll ever be. I just can't shake this feeling that Herzax is going to try something." Stella's smile faded. "I know. I've been keeping an eye on him, but he's been slippery. Always seems to know when I'm watching." Marcus nodded grimly. "We'll just have to be extra vigilant. The inspectors could arrive at any moment, and we need to be prepared for anything." As if on cue, his comm crackled to life. "Supervisor Hale, the inspectors have docked and are on their way to the main concourse. Please report immediately." Marcus squared his shoulders. "Showtime. Let's do this." Together they strode out of the room, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The main concourse was a hive of activity as Marcus and Stella arrived. The janitorial team was out in force, making last-minute adjustments and touch-ups. The floor gleamed, the air smelled faintly of disinfectant, and every surface was polished to a high shine. Marcus felt a swell of pride as he surveyed his team's work. They had come so far in such a short time, transforming from a ragtag group of demoralized workers into a well-oiled machine. He caught the eye of a few team members and gave them a nod of approval, watching as they straightened with pride. But his moment of satisfaction was short-lived. A hush fell over the concourse as a group of imposing figures emerged from the docking bay. The inspectors had arrived. There were 3 of them, each more intimidating than the last. In the lead was a tall, slender Valkorian woman with icy blue skin and piercing silver eyes. She was flanked by a burly Krogan with a craggy, battle-scarred face and a sleek, serpentine Vathian with iridescent scales. Marcus stepped forward, Stella at his side, and gave a crisp salute. "Inspectors, welcome to Way Station Zeta. I'm Supervisor Marcus Hale, and this is my assistant, Stella. We're honored to have you here, Ma." The Valkorian woman regarded him coolly. Supervisor Hale, I am Inspector Traxa, and these are my colleagues, Inspectors Krull and Zeth. We are here to conduct a thorough evaluation of your department's operations and adherence to station protocols. Marcus nodded. Of course, Inspector. We have nothing to hide. Please allow me to give you a tour of our facilities. As he led the inspectors through the station, Marcus felt a growing sense of unease. Everything seemed to be in order, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Stella, too, seemed on edge, her eyes darting around as if searching for hidden threats. It wasn't until they reached the waste processing center that Marcus realized what was wrong. The room was spotless, the machinery humming with efficiency. But there, lurking in the shadows, was Hertzax. The Zoran stepped forward, a malevolent glint in his obsidian eyes. "Inspectors," he said, his voice dripping with false deference. "I'm so glad you're here. There's something you need to see." With a flourish, he produced a data pad and handed it to Inspector Traxa. "As you can see, Supervisor Hale has been grossly negligent in his duties. The toxic waste spill last week was a direct result of his incompetence and lack of leadership." Marcus felt his blood run cold. This was it, the moment he'd been dreading. Herzax was trying to sabotage him, to paint him as a failure in front of the inspectors. But before he could defend himself, Stella stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. "That's a lie, and you know it, Herzax. Marcus risked his life to contain that spill and save the station. And he only had to do that because you pushed me into the waste, you miserable piece of slime." Herzax recoiled as if struck, his gray skin flushing an ugly purple. "You dare accuse me, you little—" "Enough!" Inspector Traxa's voice cracked like a whip, silencing them both. She turned to Marcus, her silver eyes boring into his. "Supervisor Hale, is this true? Did Herzax assault your assistant and attempt to sabotage the containment efforts?" Marcus met her gaze unflinchingly. "Yes, Inspector. Stella nearly died because of his actions. I have multiple witnesses who can corroborate her account." Traxa nodded, her expression unreadable. "I see. And how did you respond to this incident, Supervisor?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I filed an official report and recommended disciplinary action through the proper channels. I believe in following protocol and maintaining the integrity of our department, even in the face of personal attacks." There was a long, tense moment as Traxa studied him, her eyes searching his face for any hint of deception. Finally, she turned to her colleagues and gave a curt nod. "Inspectors Krull and Zeth, please escort Herzax to the brig. He will be held there pending a full investigation into these allegations." Herzax's jaw dropped, his eyes bulging with shock and rage. "You can't do this! I'm the victim here! Hale is the one who should be punished!" But the inspectors were already moving, their faces grim with determination. They seized Herzax by the arms and hauled him away, his protests echoing down the corridor. Marcus watched them go, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over him. It was over. Herzax's scheme had been exposed, and he had been vindicated, but his relief was short-lived. Inspector Traxa turned back to him, her expression still inscrutable. "Supervisor Hale, while I commend you for your handling of this incident, there are still many areas of your department that require improvement. Your team's performance during this inspection has been adequate, but hardly exemplary." Marcus felt his heart sink. After all his hard work, all the progress they had made, it still wasn't enough. He braced himself for the worst, expecting a scathing report and a demotion back to the ranks. But then, something unexpected happened. One by one, his team members stepped forward, their faces set with determination. "Inspector Traxa, if I may." It was Jax, a grizzled old Krogan who had been with the department for decades. "I've served under a lot of supervisors in my time, but none of them have shown the kind of leadership and integrity that Marcus Hale has. He's turned this department around, made us proud to be part of it again, and he did it all while dealing with that snake Herzax's constant undermining." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathered workers, and more of them began to speak up, sharing stories of Marcus's fairness, his dedication, his unwavering support in the face of adversity. Marcus felt a lump form in his throat as he listened to their words, their heartfelt testimonials. He had never realized just how much his efforts had meant to them, how much they had come to respect and admire him. And then Stella was there, her hands slipping into his, her eyes shining with love and pride. "Inspector, I think it's clear that Marcus is more than just an adequate leader. He's an exceptional one. and we're all lucky to have him. Traxa listened to it all, her expression slowly shifting from one of cool appraisal to something almost resembling respect. When the last worker had spoken, she turned back to Marcus, a faint smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Well, Supervisor Hale, it seems your team has spoken, and while I still have some reservations about your department's overall performance, I cannot ignore the overwhelming evidence of your positive impact as a leader. She made a notation on her datapad, then looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes with a nod. I will be recommending that you retain your position as supervisor, with a commendation for your handling of the Herzax incident. Congratulations, Supervisor Hale. Keep up the good work. With that, she turned and strode away, leaving Marcus standing there, stunned and elated. He had done it. He had proven himself, not just to the inspectors, but to his team and to himself. Stella threw her arms around him, laughing with joy and relief. You did it, Marcus. I knew you could. I'm so proud of you. Marcus hugged her back, burying his face in her lavender hair and breathing in her sweet, familiar scent. I couldn't have done it without you, Stella. Without any of you. You're the reason I'm here, the reason I keep fighting. And as his team gathered around him, their faces alight with pride and camaraderie, Marcus felt a sense of belonging, of purpose that he had never known before. This was where he was meant to be, leading these incredible people, making a difference in their lives and in the life of the station. He had started as just a janitor, a lowly human in a world of superior beings. But now he was so much more. He was a leader, a friend, a lover. He was Marcus Hale, supervisor of Waste Station Zeta's janitorial department, and he was just getting started. Marcus stood before the floor-to-ceiling window of the observation deck, his heart racing with a mixture of excitement and nerves. The stars stretched out before him, an endless expanse of glittering lights against the velvet black of space. It was a breathtaking sight, but it paled in comparison to the beauty of the woman standing beside him. Stella leaned against the railing, her lavender skin luminous in the starlight. She wore a flowing dress of shimmering silver, the fabric clinging to her curves in a way that made Marcus's mouth go dry. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, exposing the graceful line of her neck and the delicate points of her ears. She turned to him, her amber eyes sparkling with curiosity. So what's this big surprise you've been hinting at all week? You know, I'm not good with suspense. Marcus grinned, feeling a flutter of butterflies in his stomach. Well, I wanted to do something special for you, to show you how much you mean to me. And with everything that's happened lately, I figured we could both use a little break from the chaos. He took her hand, marveling at the softness of her skin against his. Stella, these past few months have been the most incredible of my life, and it's all because of you. You've been my rock, my inspiration, my partner in every sense of the word. I can't imagine my life without you in it. Stella's eyes widened, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Marcus, what are you saying? He took a deep breath, reaching into his pocket to pull out a small, velvet box. I'm saying that I love you, Stella, more than anything in this universe, and I want to spend the rest of my life showing you just how much. He dropped to one knee, opening the box to reveal a glittering ring of woven gold and silver, a single star-bright diamond nestled at its center. Stella, will you marry me? For a moment, Stella just stared at him, her eyes brimming with tears. Then, with a choked sob of joy, she threw herself into his arms, nearly knocking him off balance. Yes, she cried, peppering his face with kisses. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. Marcus laughed, his heart soaring with elation as he slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had always been meant for her. He pulled her close, capturing her lips in a deep, passionate kiss that seemed to go on forever. But their moment of bliss was shattered by a sudden, deafening explosion. The deck shuddered beneath their feet, throwing them to the ground as alarms blared and emergency lights flashed. Marcus scrambled to his feet, his mind racing with adrenaline and fear. What the hell was that? Stella clutched at his arm, her eyes wide with terror. I don't know, but it sounded bad. We need to get to the command center, find out what's going on. They raced through the corridors, dodging falling debris and panicked crew members. The air was thick with smoke and the acrid stench of burning plastic, and the station's artificial gravity seemed to be fluctuating, making each step a struggle. When they reached the command center, they found it in chaos. Consoles sparked and sputtered, screens flickered with static, and the floor was littered with shattered glass and twisted metal. In the center of it all stood Commander Xaria, his face grim and his uniform smeared with soot. "Supervisor Hale, thank the stars you're here," he said, his voice strained with tension. "We've got a situation on our hands." Marcus stepped forward, his jaw set with determination. "What happened, Commander? Was it an accident or—" Xaria shook his head, his silver eyes haunted. "No accident. It was a deliberate attack, a series of coordinated explosions across the station. We're still assessing the damage, but it looks like the worst of it was centered around the reactor core and the life support systems." Stella gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "An attack? But who would do such a thing? And why?" Xaria's expression darkened. "We don't know for certain, but there are reports of a group of armed insurgents storming the engineering decks just before the explosions. They were wearing the colors of Herzax's old faction, the Zeronian supremacy." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Herzax's loyalists here on the station? But how? And more importantly, why now, after months of quiet? He pushed aside his questions, focusing on the immediate crisis at hand. "What do you need us to do, Commander?" Xaria hesitated, his eyes flicking between Marcus and Stella. "I need you to lead a team down to the reactor core, assess the damage, and see if you can get the backup systems online. But it's going to be dangerous. The insurgents are still at large, and they'll be looking to finish what they started." Marcus nodded, his resolve hardening. "We'll do it, Commander. Whatever it takes to save the station." Stella stepped up beside him, her hands slipping into his. "We're in this together, Marcus, no matter what happens." He squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her presence. "Always, Stella. Always." They gathered a team of volunteers, a mix of janitorial staff and security personnel, and armed themselves with whatever weapons they could find. Then, with a final nod to Commander Xaria, they set off into the bowels of the station, into the heart of the danger. The journey was treacherous, a nightmarish gauntlet of smoke and flames, of twisted metal and sparking wires. They encountered pockets of resistance along the way, Zeronian insurgents who fought with the desperate ferocity of true believers. But Marcus and his team met them head-on, their skills honed by months of training and their hearts fueled by a fierce determination to protect their home. When they reached the reactor core, they found it in shambles, the containment fields flickering and the coolant systems leaking. But there, amidst the wreckage, was a sight that made Marcus's blood run cold. Herzax stood before the reactor, a detonator clutched in his clawed hand and a mad gleam in his obsidian eyes. His once pristine uniform was tattered and scorched, and his gray skin was mottled with bruises and burns. "Well, well, well," he sneered, his voice dripping with venom. "If it isn't the great Supervisor Hale, come to save the day once again. But you're too late, human. This station and everything on it is doomed." Marcus stepped forward, his weapon trained on Herzax's chest. "It's over, Herzax. Your little rebellion has failed. Surrender now, and you might just live to see a trial." Herzax laughed, a harsh grating sound that echoed off the reactor's walls. "Surrender? To you, a mere human? I would rather die than bow to your kind." His thumb hovered over the detonator, a final mocking smile twisting his lips. "And if I'm going to die, I'm taking you all with me." Time seemed to slow, each heartbeat stretching into an eternity. Marcus saw Herzax's thumb begin to descend, saw the flicker of triumph in his eyes, and in that moment, he knew what he had to do. He lunged forward, tackling Herzax with all his strength. They grappled for the detonator, rolling and thrashing across the floor in a desperate struggle. Marcus could hear Stella screaming his name, could feel the heat of the reactor at his back, but all he could focus on was the device in Herzax's hand, the key to the station's destruction. With a final, wrenching effort, he pried the detonator from Herzax's grasp and hurled it away, sending it skittering across the floor. Herzax howled with rage, his claws raking across Marcus's face and chest, but Marcus held on, pinning the Zoron beneath him with all his weight, and then it was over. Security personnel swarmed in, restraining Herzax and his remaining followers. Medics tended to the wounded, while engineers worked frantically to stabilize the reactor and restore power to the station. Marcus sat amidst the chaos, his head spinning and his body aching with 1,000 bruises and cuts. But when Stella knelt beside him, her eyes shining with tears of relief and her hands gentle on his face, He knew that it had all been worth it. "You did it, Marcus," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You saved us all." He leaned into her touch, letting her strength flow into him. "We did it, Stella. You and me, and all of us. We're a team, remember?" She laughed, a sound of pure joy amidst the devastation. "How could I forget? You're the one who taught me that, fearless leader." He grinned, pulling her into a fierce hug. "And you're the one who taught me what it means to be truly brave, my love." They clung to each other, battered but unbroken, their hearts full of hope and their eyes fixed on the future. They had faced the worst the universe could throw at them, and they had emerged victorious. Together they could face anything, and as the station slowly came back to life around them, as the stars shone down through the observation deck windows, Marcus knew that he had finally found his place in the universe, not as a janitor or even as a supervisor, but as a husband, a leader, and a true hero of Waystation Zeta. In the weeks following the attack, Waystation Zeta was a hive of activity. Repair crews worked around the clock to mend the damage, security forces patrolled the corridors with renewed vigilance, and the station's leadership held endless meetings to discuss strategies and contingencies. At the center of it all was Marcus, thrust into the role of crisis manager and public figurehead. He spent his days coordinating with Commander Zarn and the other department heads, making tough decisions and rallying the troops with his signature blend of humor and heartfelt sincerity. It was exhausting work, and there were moments when Marcus felt the weight of it all pressing down on him like a physical burden. But whenever his spirits flagged, Stella was there, a constant source of strength and support. She was his sounding board, his voice of reason, his shelter from the storm. In the quiet moments they stole together, she held him close and reminded him of what they were fighting for. Not just the station, but the love they shared in the future they dreamed of building together. But even as the station began to heal and life started to return to something resembling normalcy, new challenges emerged. Marcus and Stella found themselves at the center of a media frenzy, their faces plastered across news feeds and their names on everyone's lips. To some, they were heroes, shining examples of the power of unity and cooperation. But to others, they were symbols of a changing order, a threat to the status quo. There were those who resented Marcus for his human origins, who saw his rise to power as an affront to their own sense of superiority. They whispered that he was too soft, too weak to lead, that he would never truly understand the ways of the galaxy. And there were those who questioned Stella's loyalty, who wondered if her love for a human had compromised her allegiance to her own kind. They muttered that she was a traitor, a sellout, a disgrace to her species. The whispers grew louder, the tensions higher, until it seemed that the very fabric of the station was straining at the seams. But through it all, Marcus and Stella held fast to each other and to their convictions. They knew that their love was a strength, not a weakness, and that the diversity of the station was its greatest asset. They believed that by working together, by embracing their differences and finding common ground, they could build a better future for all. And so they set out to prove it, not with grand gestures or sweeping proclamations, but with small, everyday acts of kindness and compassion. Marcus made a point of seeking out the station's most marginalized and overlooked residents, listening to their stories and their struggles. He worked tirelessly to improve their living conditions, to give them a voice and a seat at the table. Stella used her position as the station's newly appointed Director of Cultural Exchange to organize events and initiatives that celebrated the rich tapestry of the station's many species and cultures. She created spaces for dialogue and understanding, for the sharing of ideas and the forging of new bonds. Together, they led by example, showing that a human and an alien could not only coexist, but thrive together. And slowly, gradually, the tide began to turn. The whispers faded, replaced by a growing chorus of support and admiration. The old prejudices and divisions began to crumble, giving way to a new sense of unity and purpose. And when the day came for Marcus and Stella to exchange their vows in a grand station-wide ceremony, it felt like a triumph, not just for them, but for all of Waystation Zeta. They stood together on the observation deck, the very spot where Marcus had proposed, surrounded by a sea of smiling faces, human and alien, old friends and new allies. Stella was a vision in a gown of shimmering stardust, her lavender skin glowing with joy and love. Marcus, resplendent in his dress uniform, felt his heart swell with pride and gratitude as he looked out over the crowd. "Friends, family, fellow citizens of Way Station Zeta," he began, his voice ringing out clear and strong. "Today we gather to celebrate not just the joining of two hearts, but the power of unity and love to transform our world." He turned to Stella, his eyes shining with emotion. "Stella, my love, my partner, my guiding star, you have taught me so much about strength, about courage, about the true meaning of leadership. With you by my side, I feel like I can face anything the universe throws at us." Stella smiled, her own eyes brimming with tears of happiness. "Marcus, my heart, my home, my forever. You have shown me the beauty and resilience of the human spirit, the power of compassion and kindness to change lives. I am so proud to stand with you, to build a life and a future with you." They exchanged rings, simple bands of woven starlight that symbolize the intertwining of their lives and their destinies. And as they sealed their union with a kiss, the crowd erupted in cheers and applause. But the greatest surprise of the day came after the ceremony, as Marcus and Stella made their way through the throngs of well-wishers. There, waiting for them at the edge of the crowd, was a familiar figure, Herzax. The Zoran looked different, his once proud bearing humbled, and his eyes filled with a new depth of understanding. He approached the newlyweds cautiously, his head bowed in contrition. "Supervisor Hale, Director Stella," he began, his voice rough with emotion. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness after all the harm I have caused. But I wanted to tell you, I was wrong about everything." Marcus and Stella exchanged a glance, their hands instinctively seeking each other's. Marcus stepped forward, his expression guarded but not unkind. "Go on," he said, his voice even. Herzax took a deep breath as if steeling himself. "I was so blinded by my own prejudice, my own sense of superiority, that I couldn't see the truth that was right in front of me. That humans are not lesser beings, but equals partners in the great dance of the universe." He looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes with a newfound respect. "You showed me that, Supervisor. Your strength, your compassion, your unwavering commitment to justice. It humbled me. It made me realize how small and petty I had been." Herzax turned to Stella, his expression softening. "And you, Director? Your love for this man, for this human, it is a beautiful thing, a testament to the power of the heart to transcend all boundaries." He bowed his head once more, his voice thick with regret. "I do not ask for your forgiveness, for I know I do not deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I have changed, that I will spend the rest of my days trying to be a better man, a better citizen of this station and this galaxy." For a long moment, Marcus and Stella were silent, the weight of Herzax's words hanging in the air between them. Then slowly Marcus extended his hand. "Herzax," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "The past is the past. What matters is who we choose to be, here and now. If you truly mean what you say, if you're willing to put in the work, then I believe in second chances." Herzax's eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, it seemed he might break down. But he composed himself, reaching out to clasp Marcus's hand in a firm, respectful shake. "Thank you, Supervisor," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I will not let you down. I will be the man this station needs me to be, the man I know I can be." Stella stepped forward, placing her hand over their joined ones. "We all have the capacity for change, Herzax, for growth, for redemption. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it." The Zoran nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I see that now, Director, and I will spend the rest of my days proving it, to myself and to all of you." With that, he bowed once more and took his leave, disappearing into the crowd with a new lightness in his step. Marcus and Stella watched him go, their hearts full of hope and wonder. "Do you think he meant it?" Stella asked softly, leaning into Marcus's embrace. "Do you think he can really change?" Marcus smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I think anyone can change, my love, if they're willing to try, to open their hearts and their minds. And something tells me Herzax is just the beginning." He looked out over the observation deck, at the sea of faces representing so many different species, so many different walks of life, all united in this moment, in this place, in this grand adventure they called life. "This is just the start, Stella," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "The start of a new era for Way Station Zeta, for the whole galaxy, an era of unity, of understanding, of love. Stella smiled, her eyes shining with the same fierce hope and determination. "And we'll be there to lead the way, my heart. Together, always." They kissed once more, a promise and a celebration all in one. And as the stars wheeled overhead and the station hummed with the energy of new beginnings, Marcus and Stella knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as they always had, hand in hand, heart to heart, ready to take on the universe and win.